This is a Hope 1032 podcast.
Hello, welcome to Undistracted. I'm your host, Laura Bennett, and this is the podcast where we learn from our guests how to be better at building our lives with intention around our passions, our purpose, and deal with some of the stuff that gets in the way of that. You can find video versions of many of these conversations on the Hope 1032 YouTube channel and subscribe wherever you're listening. Rate it, review it. I would love to hear what you think. Louisa May Alcott's novel, Little Women, it's been adapted for film nearly 10 times since it was published in 1868, and this year it's got a reimagined Christmas twist in A Little Women's Christmas under the direction of feel-good romance genre icon Brian Bird. Behind the scenes of projects like Touched by an Angel, The Case for Christ and Hallmark phenomenon When Calls the Heart, Brian wants to tell stories that inspire but also address real human challenges. In this conversation, Brian talks about the roots of family division and how to correct it, mixing realism with cheesy ideals, and how Aussie Dean Geyer ended up in his movie. Let's welcome Brian to the show. What is it that draws you to that particular genre?
I guess it's the fact that maybe I was raised, with pastors in my family. So I was in church a lot growing up. And my dad became a radio DJ in my growing up years. And so I had sort of one foot in the media and one foot in the church pews. And so that blending of media and faith elements for me has always just been there. And I've always, believed that while everybody else wants to bring us vampires and zombies and crystal meth dealers and corrupt politicians and lawyers and doctors and all that stuff, I just want to tell stories that lift people's hearts. That's what I'm supposed to do. So I just keep doing it. It's not the most popular thing in my business in terms of like my peers. They would rather do edgier kinds of content. But I want to get edgy in here. Like I want to stir up soul cravings, I guess is the best way to say it. And that can lead people to want to have a conversation around the water cooler, or want to have a coffee together, or a cup of tea or something where they want to, create relationship. And I don't think that's a bad thing in our culture when everybody else is sort of at each other's throats, to try to bring them together over common hunger, common need for goodness. So that's sort of, I'm drawn to it. I think the world needs more of it. I'm happy to be the one that does it. It makes me feel like maybe, there'll be some extra points for me in heaven. I don't know, but it's what I'm supposed to do. So I just keep showing up and trying to do the best work I can do.
Why do you feel you're supposed to do it? That sounds like it's a very, a deep inner compulsion.
Yeah, a sense of mission, a sense of meaning, I guess. I've always believed that we should all strive to be, about something bigger than ourselves in the world, and to make the world a better place, to offer hope and amplify light in the world. There's plenty of other people that want to amplify darkness. I just choose to do the other thing. And I think that ultimately, maybe I just want, if I knew I had the cure for everything that ails humanity, why would I hide that? And I sort of believe we do. Like I feel like I know what the cure is, and so I want to share it with other people. So anyway, it's just my personal sense of mission. I had somebody tell me when I was young that this writing skill that I have is like an instrument. And they said, don't just get good enough to be in a garage band, get good enough to be in the symphony. And so I'm still trying to get to the symphony. That carrot is dangling in front of me. And some people will say, well, you're already in a symphony. But like there's somebody in first chair and I'm in fifth chair. I want to be in first chair. It's still hanging there in front of me. And so that striving for excellence, striving to encourage excellence in others has just always been there as a calling.
Sounds like your drive kind of feeds your drive. But in terms of having, this sort of answer that I suppose a lot of culture, a lot of people are looking for right now, are you saying that sits in faith, the faith that you have?
Yes, it is part of my Christian faith. I'm a Jesus follower. I have been since I was a boy, and while we all go through sort of different cycles in our lives where we might fall out of faith, or we come back to faith, we have to believe for ourselves, right? We can't just inherit it from our family. You have to come to a place where you believe it yourself, and that happened for me as an adult. And so it's just who I am. I think it's a better way to live for me. Maybe I'll be a blessing to other people by living that way.
When you're telling stories that include references to faith or lives that show faith on display, there can be criticism that comes at you for looking at life perhaps in too optimistic a lens, or, sanitizing some of the challenges. How do you make the stories you tell, the characters that you represent in something like A Little Women's Christmas, or even thinking about When Calls the Heart that you've been hugely, successful with? How do you make it authentic and sincere and not something that feels cheesy or sort of ignorant, I suppose?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there has to be a balance between realism and idealism. And some people will look at a show like When Calls the Heart and say, well, boy, those people sure look nice and their hair looks good all the time and they're dressed beautifully. Well, if we could go back and recreate the real world of 1920, people were kind of grubby. And, so we choose to maybe put a little bit more idealism in the mix than realism that way. But we want to tell stories that are real here, right? And be authentic to the human experience. So our characters, we've had death on When Calls the Heart. It's caused quite an apocalypse for some of our Hardies, our fan base. The Hardy apocalypse is what we call that. And we don't do that very often, but we've had little Jack, develop juvenile diabetes in 1920s. That was a life and death situation in the 1920s, and it caused really some, for some folks, it's like, whoa, that's not the escapism that we're looking for here. Well, we think we need to do both, right? We think we need to tell stories that are relevant to people now, right? And in a contemporary setting, that, or at least have themes of human struggle that are relevant to what we all go through in a contemporary setting. So, the way we say it is that we want to give them what they want, but also what they need.
Yeah.
And we kind of feel like sometimes we need a dose of that reality so that the way our characters recover from it is something that people can learn from. When Mountie Jack died in season 5 of When Calls the Heart, it truly caused an apocalypse on our fan base. But it was some of the best episodes we ever did, and it was some of the most compelling and gripping, TV we ever did. And we need to do both. We need to give them laughs. We need to give them cries. We need to give them stories where they can say, you know what, I've been struggling over here in this area. They just handle that in a different way than I have. Maybe I could take a lesson from that. And TV characters, film characters are role models in one way or another. And they come from the writers and the producers who make them up for people, or who are telling true stories and amplifying those true stories in storytelling in the cinemas or on TV sets. But if we give people an idea of how they could get through their own life and get through their own challenges in a better way, how is that a bad thing?
Yeah.
I just don't see that. I think we can give them really bad role models too. And there are plenty of the people doing that. Like, there are plenty of bad role models, in our movies and our TV shows. So I just prefer, not to give perfect, we don't want to depict perfect people, but we want it at the end of the day to know that even people that make mistakes can end up doing the right thing.
And maybe, for fans of this kind of genre, there is something uncomfortable when we see characters go through something difficult or when there is real challenge, because like you said, you want this to be a sense of escapism. But I think there is something really powerful to communicate to audiences that even when life may look ideal and the hair is perfect and the makeup is right and love looks amazing, things still go wrong. Like no version of reality is completely trouble-free.
That's right. That's right. And folks who sort of are all in on scientific materialism, they look at the world, and the universe as nothing more than blind, pitiless indifference. Well, when you draw back the curtain on that sort of Nietzschean worldview, it's just a big black void staring at you, right? I think when you draw back the curtain on these kinds of stories, it's a giant love story from heaven to earth that needs to go from the vertical position to the horizontal position. We need to take that love story and go horizontal with it. And, it's honestly just a worldview issue to me. It's like, this is my worldview. So other people have their worldview. God bless them. I'm going to tell you my worldview. And I think it's actually better for the culture, better for humanity in the long run.
And bringing the story of Little Women into the Christmas season, this story, of course, is one that there's been so many different iterations of. It has really stood the test of time. Why did you want it to be something that people experience at this time of year?
Well, it's a great question. How do we compete with Louisa May Alcott or compete with the host of wonderful adaptations that have already been filmed? We decided to make it an alternate reality version of Little Women, a contemporary version, kind of a reimagining of the story of the March sisters set in a small Tennessee town of Alcott Grove today, like contemporary, at Christmas time, because we'd never seen anything like that before. But all the spirit, the tone, the values, we think of Little Women, the great classic novel that millions of people love and have loved. We think that it's all there, A Little Women's Christmas. We wanted to give lots of Easter eggs from the book back to the audience so they could at least feel the heartbeat of Louisa May Alcott there. But obviously in a reimagining in a contemporary setting, we had to take some liberties with the storytelling. Beth doesn't die in our story.
Yeah, it's not a strict remake.
Yeah, exactly. And so we wanted to, hit all the right notes of the book, but also all the right notes of Christmas time and in a family-friendly way to give people all the feels that they have come to love in When Calls Hard and other projects that I've been involved in. And so I think we accomplished that. And the test of that for me is that we got an incredible cast in this movie. When we started to send the script around, we were trying to get 1 or 2 stars in this. And they just all said, no, I want to be in this. And it wasn't a huge budget movie, but it was, all these people said, look, we want to just participate in this because we love it. We'll work at a discount for you. And so we got an incredible cast, Gillian Murray, Trevor Donovan, Laura Osnes, Jesse Hutch, Jen Lilly, Australia's Dean Geyer joined us because he was just going to be there to support his wife, Gillian Murray. And we said, why are you just sitting around? You should be in the movie.
No, I love seeing him on screen. That was a great choice.
Yes. And so it was so fun for us and it's a family. We made this in Franklin, Tennessee, which is called Christmastown, USA. They do Christmas better than anyone that I've ever seen. And I have cousins and second cousins that live there. They're in the movie as well. We got we populated this movie with lots of family. Jesse Hutch's own daughter, Charlize, plays his daughter, Daisy.
Oh, wow. He
plays John Brooke, and Charlize, his own daughter in real life, plays Daisy. So just really, there was a family spirit about this movie, and I think it shows up when people watch it. It just kind of oozes just a beautiful family spirit and a Christmas spirit and all the best parts of Little Women's Christmas.
Yeah,
Or Little Women.
it makes for something beautiful on screen, but it sounds like it also makes for a really beautiful atmosphere behind the scenes, which I wonder, when you're coming into shows of this kind, movies of this kind, how do you assemble the right cast, the right crew for it? Like, what qualities are you looking for in the people that you're going to have? Because I imagine they can't be cynical. They can't be people that won't sign up to the beauty and the wonder and that optimism we were talking about of this kind of story.
Yeah, it's always the challenge of finding people who are not only available but also love the material. That was the first thing that attracted everybody. We had a wonderful script that was co-written by Dion Sheehan, who originally had the vision for an adaptation, a contemporary adaptation of Little Women. And then my own son, Taylor Bird, who's become an incredible writer in his own right, he joined forces with Dion and they came up with a beautiful script. And you always pray, that I do, that the right champions will step up. Because you can't always offer the world to everybody. You can't back a armored car up to everybody's house and, dump a whole pile of money to woo them to your project. Sometimes the script has to call them, or the nature of the project has to call them. And I'm telling you, we just said, look, take it or leave it. Like, if you like this, come have fun with this, come play with us. And all these folks just said, I got to be in this. I got to step up. And, that doesn't always happen on every project. And on this one, it was for us, not only these incredible cast members that I've already mentioned, but the amazing Gladys Knight, the Empress of Soul herself, said, I want to be in your movie. And not only that, but her husband and her wrote an original Gladys Knight song that has never been heard before, that is in our movie, debuts in our movie. Like, it's just like, who could imagine something like that?
Yeah, there's no way you're going to say, sorry, Gladys, we can't fit you in. It's already cast. I'm sorry.
Exactly. Yeah. Just like, yeah, how high do we have to jump, ma'am, for you to do that? It was just a blessing. And so it's sort of, as this whole thing comes together, you're just saying, is this really going to happen? And then all of a sudden, magic happens. And it's not because we're geniuses. It's because the collective experience of all those champions joining you, it's like an all-star team for us. And it was just an incredibly beautiful project for director Brandon Clark, myself, my partners with True Brand, who made the movie, and Third Coast Films, our partners in this. We're just so privileged to make this movie. And we're also just thrilled that it's coming to cinemas on December 4th, because we know there are a lot of fans of When Calls the Heart in Australia. And, we have many of them come to our fan events in Vancouver, Canada every year, the Hardy's Family Reunion. They show up in droves from Australia. They make that trek there to be part of that experience with our cast on that show, and to come to Hope Valley and just witness that place. And for Hardy's, who love When Calls the Heart, we think that this is just, while they're waiting for season 13 to show up in Australia, that this can tide them over in a good way at Christmas time this year.
Yes, we get very patient in Australia, having to wait for things that we see happening around the rest of the world, and then we're like, it's going to be our turn eventually. So very grateful that you've given us something in the mix. But at the heart of it, as we've said, is this March family, the sisters here that are really the core of what we see happen on screen. What is it about their family, and I suppose some of the way that they relate to one another, that you think is so appealing and so valuable?
Well, at a time when there's so much polarization in families, I have friends who say, my kids aren't coming home for Thanksgiving this year because we don't agree politically on things. And like, that's heartbreaking to me. Like, that is horrible. And that may be an experience that you have in Australia too sometimes. I don't know. But to me, family trumps everything. It has to. It has to override everything. And people can still love each other and agree to disagree without being, Scrooges with each other. And I really believe that. And so what I love about what is portrayed in this movie is that the March sisters, borrowing a little phrase from Ecclesiastes, are a cord of four strands that cannot easily be broken. And when sisters love each other and have that bond that can overcome any challenge in the world, nothing can break them. And they help each other through the trials of life and through the heartbreaks of life. And I love that in this movie they're called the sister knot, a knot that cannot be easily broken. So I just love that aspect of the storytelling, and I think people are going to love those four sisters so much in this depiction.
As much as we love our families, though, I have one sister. That is enough for me. She's amazing. But you can find yourself, in these situations where there's squabbles and we argue and all of the stuff of normal family life exists. How do you get through some of those disagreements, some of the challenges we may have in our extended families, so that we can be in a position where that gathering or that enjoyment of each other is not lost?
Yeah. Personally, I preach, check your politics at the door. Just leave them outside with your shoes. If you want to take your shoes off, come in, enjoy time together. I think that is the only way around this. And we have to realize that there are not multiple sets of facts, not multiple sets of truth. There is one truth, and we all just have to come to the table and just enjoy each other. When I was growing up, nobody ever, there were people from all over the political spectrum that would come to these family gatherings. It never came up. Nobody cared, because we wanted to enjoy a time together. We wanted to have a good meal together. We wanted to hear what was happening in each other's lives and bring everybody up to speed on what was going on in their lives. And there was no time set aside for, let's figure out how to fix the world. Like that just didn't exist when I was growing up. So I personally just believe there's nothing that should trump love and familial love. And we put that in our stories too. It's a better value to me than having to be right about everything.
And I suppose nowadays things are a little bit more like tribal. I was going to say tribal and individualistic, yes, which sounds like it contradicts each other, but it's like we all have our individual tribes. And so if in a family or a friendship group, for instance, you've got people that are all from different ones, that probably is where a little bit more of the conflict exists, because it feels like you can detach from that commonality because you've kind of got your own camp away from that, if that makes sense.
It does. I agree with you 100%. It is tribalism happening right now. And I just say, I'm just little of me. I just say, stop it. Leave it behind. You don't have to be in a tribe. Your tribe is your family. That's your tribe. Stick with it. You can think whatever you want on the outside of the house, but stick, with your own family, because, you're going to regret, someday, banishing people from your dinner table. I really believe that. Here's what I believe. Everybody needs grace. Everybody. Doesn't matter who it is. Everybody needs grace. Everybody deserves a little grace and a little bit of wiggle room. And we don't have to be perfect. We can have our flaws. We can have our own belief systems. But if you're going to sit down for a meal, enjoy it. Stop squabbling. Yes, I'm not saying that there aren't legitimate beefs people have with each other, but at the end of the day, there's a great movie that, if you haven't seen it, it's one of my all-time favorites. David Lynch, the director David Lynch, made this movie years ago. It's called The Straight Story. And it's about this older man who loses his license because he can't drive anymore. His eyesight is so bad. And he hears that his estranged brother is dying. And he lives in another state. And nobody can take him to see his estranged brother who is dying. And he gets his riding lawnmower out. And he rides his riding lawnmower on the interstate, on the side of the interstate, 5 miles an hour.
Wow.
And he brings his camping gear, and he gets out at night and looks up at the stars every night. And he finally makes it to his brother, and and they reconcile before his brother dies. It breaks me up. I weep when I watch that movie. It's because it's a picture of what's not supposed to happen. You're not supposed to be estranged from your family. It's not supposed to be. I know there are good reasons for it, right? And people can hurt each other, and that you got to get past that, or you got to figure out a way to deal with that or make peace with it. But everybody needs grace. Even somebody who's done something really bad, they need grace in their lives. And you're a better person if you give it, right? But if you refuse it, how much worse are you than what has happened? I think at the end of the day, you're going to feel better about yourself if you offer grace.
And even if our biological families are a little bit kind of bonkers in their own way, it's remembering, as you're talking about this, I'm reminded, there is family that we choose. There is family that we kind of make in our own way. And also, if we take it back to scripture for a second, the Bible talks about God puts the lonely in family. So the solution to the kind of disconnection we can feel or that isolation we can feel is very much to be in some form of family.
Yes, 100% right. Hurt people hurt people. That just is the truth. They do. But also healed people heal other people. So I think both are true, and we should lean into one and not the other if we can possibly do it.
Well, I'm very grateful the time you've been able to give us today, Brian, and thank you so much for your work on A Little Women's Christmas. It is in cinemas December 4. It is phenomenal. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Laura. It was an honor to be with you.
Thanks for listening to this episode. You can watch A Little Women's Christmas in cinemas from December 4. And don't forget to rate this podcast, review it, share it with a friend. Let me know what you think. You can find me on Instagram at laura.bennett_. And until next time, enjoy living this undistracted life.